Well, what a difference a day makes. It's 45 degrees today, and we're having light rain, and it's low visibility all day. So it's one of those days where it's a little bit chillier, and yesterday was all sunny and nice. So what a difference a day makes. But it's kind of fascinating that I just happened to tell a little bit of my story in my book about the Cedars of Lebanon in one of my last videos. And I find this fascinating that this article had just come out. So I thought it was fascinating that the Lord had me run across an article about the Lebanese president being open to peace with Israel, facilitating construction of the third temple, says Rabbi Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz from Israel 365 News writes, a recent statement by Lebanon's president suggested that he would be receptive to an agreement with Israel similar to the one signed with the United Arab Emirates. The announcement has huge political and security implications, suggesting that Hezbollah may be on its way out. But more importantly, a pact of brotherhood with Lebanon would be an element in the construction of the third temple, as it was in the days of King Solomon. In an interview with French-language BFM TV, President Michel Aoun was asked if he would consider making a peace agreement with Israel, as the United Arab Emirates had just done. That depends, Aoun said. We have problems with Israel and we have to resolve them first. Though the response was non-committal, this represented a major shift in his position on Israel. In 2006, as head of the Free Patriotic Movement, he signed a memorandum of understanding with Hezbollah, which included a military strategy targeting Israel. Hezbollah is a powerful political entity, having fully 1/3 of the seats in Lebanon's parliament. Concerning the recent normalization deal signed between the UAE and Israel, Aoun stated that the UAE is an independent country. Considering Israeli-Lebanese relations, it is important to note that Lebanon's flag prominently features a cedar of Lebanon, the national symbol of Lebanon, and a massive conifer. The tree appears in the Bible in several places, and King David praised them, hinting at the role that they would play in the construction of the temple. And this is why it was such a miracle that I got the Cedars of Lebanon with the type of tree that Solomon built the temple out of. And there's many kinds of cedar trees, but the Cedar of Lebanon is a huge, massive, sprawling tree. It's just so stunningly beautiful. And it says, the righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of God. They flourish in the courts of our God. Psalm 92, 13, 14. And in fact, when David's son Solomon began to build the first Jewish temple in Jerusalem, he immediately turned to the government of Lebanon to play an essential role in its construction. Solomon sent this message to King Hiram of Tyre. In view of what you did for my father David in sending him the cedars to build a palace for his residence, see, I intend to build a house for the name of my God. I will dedicate it to him for making incense offering of sweet spices in his honor, for the regular rows of bread, and for the morning and evening burnt offerings on Shabbatot, new moons and festivals, as is Israel's eternal duty. 2 Chronicles 2, 2-3. They paid the hewers and craftsmen with money, and Sidonians and Tyrians with feed and drink and oil, to bring cedar wood from Lebanon by sea to Jaffa. That's just what I just told you the other day. What a coincidence this is. And it says that they did this in accord with the authorization granted them by King Cyrus of Persia in Ezra 3:7. Work must begin soon if the cedar will appear in the third temple. Over the centuries, extensive deforestation has occurred, and only small remnants of the original forest survive. The Lebanese state has created several reserves utilizing a DNA-based method of identification to ensure that reforestation efforts in Lebanon are of the cedars of Lebanon and not other types. One reserve, named the Cedars of God, located in the Kadisha Valley of Bashar, is one of the last vestiges of the extensive forests of the Lebanon cedar. Rabbi Yosef Berger, the rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion, noted that official relations with Lebanon would certainly facilitate the construction of the third temple, but it also represented the appearance of other essential elements. The altar cannot be constructed of stone shaped by iron implements, since iron is used in war to shorten life, and the temple is meant to lengthen life, Rabbi Berger noted. For that reason, King David, who waged many wars, was unable to construct the temple. His son, King Solomon, made treaties and was therefore able to build the temple. Rabbi Berger noted the gematria, the numerological value in Hebrew of Donald Trump, is 424, equaling Mashiach ben David, the Messiah from the house of David. This indicates that the U.S. president is bringing about conditions for the Messiah and the third temple, Rabbi Berger said. Netanyahu, who is a man of war like King David, is not suited to build the third temple. The man of peace, who comes after him, will build the temple. But peace treaties will create peace and the conditions for building the third temple. People who rely on reason will ignore or not even be able to see the changes that are happening. If you see current events through the eyes of faith, rely on the Bible. The plan is very clear. The rabbi noted that this unnaturally quick transition from war to peace was hinted at by the prophet Isaiah. Thus he will judge among the nations and arbitrate for the many peoples. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not take up sword against nation. They shall never again know war. Isaiah 2, verse 4. I just got finished telling you about the cedars of Lebanon and the miracle of me getting the Cedar of Lebanon cones that I was able to trace to the variety that is in the forest of God, that's now a protected forest. And it was because of Thomas Jefferson's seed collecting, and he collected rare seeds, went to Paris, and this gentleman had brought a sapling from the forest of God way back in the 1700s and brought it to Paris. It was planted in the Jardin des Plantes, the botanical gardens in Paris, and there the tree grew, and I believe it's still alive there in the botanical gardens. And then, as I said in my book, that my research showed that President Madison's gardener, who was friends with Thomas Jefferson, obtained either a seed or sapling, and so he has a 200-year-old tree on his property. So miraculously, botanist sent me some of the cones from that tree. And I told you that I was able to get some of them to Israel, to the harp makers. And they didn't like the fact that I talked about Jesus, so they kind of excommunicated me after a while, which is very sad, to shut me down after I gave them such a massive gift of unimaginable proportions. You guys, that was a God-ordained miracle. And when I told her that I wanted to plant these trees in Israel and call it the forest of the king, she told me she was uncomfortable with that. So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of bizarre. So obviously not comfortable, because they know the king I'm talking about is King Yeshua, the Messiah, King of Israel, and that when he comes, I wanted a cedar of Lebanon forest for him to walk under, and I would just walk with him and hold his hand and talk all about the book that he gave me and all the revelations in it and the miracles that took place in it. And it was just so incredible that I just mentioned the Cedars of Lebanon in the story that is in my book about it, and how miraculous it was that, you know, after she knew that I believed in Jesus and all of that, she told me that the seeds that she obtained disintegrated to dust, which does not happen. You guys, these things are like little wings. They're kind of triangular shape, and they have a little seed pod on the bottom. And when you set them in the soil and you put them in the sun, they move. You literally can see them going like this. Like in the window, they were sitting there going like this. Very slowly, but it was like they were little solar panels. It was so extraordinary. And of course, I filmed the whole thing at my home. My mom had given me this small little greenhouse, which was just perfect for protecting them in the little seed trays and all. I had 2 of them sprout, and the botanist told me that there's only a 1% chance that any would sprout. And I had 2 sprout, and they lived to be about that tall. And then the neighbor sprayed some sort of herbicide on their bushes, and it drifted in the wind and eliminated my little seedlings. But I got pictures of them when they first opened up. They looked like a little umbrella with needles coming out, you know, kind of long pine needles on the ends, you know, like it looked like a little umbrella, like the stem was red, and then the needles were this kind of bluish greenish color. And they were so amazing. So that story is in my book, along with photographs that I took, and I also had video proof. However, I had my video camera at the time. I didn't have a digital camera like this. So it's an extraordinary addition to the fact that apparently the president of Lebanon is working some deal with the people that are going to build the 3rd temple to be able to use the cedar of Lebanon somehow. The forest of God is a protected forest by UNESCO, and so you can't get anything from that forest. But if they've been extracting the DNA, you know, of course these trees take forever to grow. So by the time you would get lumber, the tree would have to just be, you know, a couple 100 years old. So I don't know how they'll work this out, but it's really extraordinary. And I encourage you to read my story about this in the Almond Tree, Aaron's Rod, the Messiah, King of Israel at Olive Press Publisher. It's also at other online bookstores, but my publisher's the best place to get it. And it's an incredible story because it was an incredible miracle from God. The chances of anybody getting these kind of seeds or pine cones to them was 1 or 1,000,000,000 to 1 shot. So to be treated like they disintegrated to dust, I knew that that was just a lie. It was just that they didn't like Jesus. And that's really sad to me. But later on, I found out that some of the fires that they had in Israel destroyed their whole harp shop, and all the harps they had built that were in the shop burned to the ground to dust. So what she said to me about my blessing turning to dust is what happened to their workshop, which blew my mind. And I wouldn't wish that on them or anything, but it's kind of interesting that her own words came to roost in her own situation. I don't hear anything about them anymore, but they built the harps for the third temple. And, you know, we talked for about 5 years. And, you know, when I sent the Gospel of John movie to her, she said they gave it away to their neighbor. And I don't know. I was just telling her how cool the character of Nathaniel was, that, you know, he was wearing a Jewish prayer shawl, and they showed the temple in the movie, and it was so well done. And I just loved that movie. And really, it's kind of what inspired me and before I started writing my book. But the Cedars of Lebanon, the cedar tree that's 200 years old, was actually something I put on my CD when I was doing a music CD. And, you know, I wrote all this music and arranged it and played all the instruments and sang. And I did what I could, which is a small little 8-track. And then I had a mixing board through my computer at home. And all of that stuff has been packed up for nearly 5 years where I haven't been able to record a thing. But the computer stopped using Vista, so I would have to replace the whole system and to be able to record again and set up my equipment. But, you know, it's just, when I look back on what a miracle this was, and now they're talking to the people building the third temple about obtaining the cedar of Lebanon from the forest of God, or somehow how they've taken the DNA from those trees and done something with it, it's really coming full circle. And you know what? Another sign, I believe, that the king is coming. And can I tell you that, just like Jeremiah, I've seen the rod of an almond tree. I actually have one. Jim and Penny Caldwell have at least one. And I would love to interview them sometime on my channel. And I just think it's really a message from God. Because remember, when Jeremiah saw the rod of an almond tree, it meant out of the north that an invasion was going to come, and that God was watching over his word to perform it, which I said at the end of my book, and that what was soon to come was going to be us having these almond rods, that Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots, is about to come into power. So God is watching over his word to perform it. He performed all of these miracles in my life, and I paid an extraordinary price, because to whom much is given, much is required, which has been pretty much everything. I thank each and every person that has been faithful and loyal to me on my channel, because God is going to reward you for sticking with somebody who's telling the truth of God's word and trying to get these stories and truths out there, because they're just miraculous. And now we can see that the Cedar of Lebanon will play a role in the third temple. And granted, we are the spiritual temple in Messiah Yeshua, so we're going up to be with the king. But they're going to pick another king, as I've told you a million times. And so when they do that, that's when the judgments come, because they will have put somebody in place of the true heir. And you can't do that without judgments coming. But this is fascinating how this is all working. And I just thank God for those miracles that happened. There was a lot more to the story that's in my book that it would take a long time to tell on the channel here. But some other miraculous things happened, along with receiving a box unexpectedly on my front porch. When we came home, we came in the garage, we looked out the family room windows, and this buck was lying under my succa tree, which was a crabapple tree, and it was facing Jerusalem, where I would build my sukkah facing Jerusalem, because I had a Jerusalem compass that instead of facing north, it faces Jerusalem. So basically my front door of my house was facing Jerusalem. I just kind of had to turn slightly and to the right. And my sukkah would face that, and this deer, full-size deer with huge fuzzy antlers that were nearly 2 feet tall, and they were covered with the felt, and he was majestic. And I took pictures. He's on the back cover of my book, and there's so much to that story too about him and details about him. But then I went to the front door, opened the door, and here's this box, and the botanist told me he had a freak snowstorm which snapped off a fresh branch, and my book was about Messiah the branch of eternal life. And here's this green branch, just like it was just snipped off the tree, and it smelled so marvelous. And I still have the box somewhere, and it had a piece of a pine cone still stuck on it, which now just got the little post because it had loose seeds in it. And I had this whole story where I talked about how God was telling me how to open the cones and how to plant them and what to plant them in and all of this stuff. So here came this unexpected blessing, and the deer was in the backyard, which was like, Mom and I called him the little prince. And he just came at the most incredible times. You guys, you just had to be there. It was such a Holy Spirit filled, beautiful miracle of God. And if you believe deep in your heart, in your life, that he can perform these miracles, you get close to him and you know him more and more. He'll do extraordinary things, and this is what was happening to me. So I just got to share this thing about the Cedars of Lebanon because it's something very special to my heart. I even wrote a song about it. So I just wanted to share this. I thought you would find it extraordinary. So please give a like, subscribe, and make sure you're still subscribed. Sorry if comments get deleted. All kinds of things happen to me on YouTube, unfortunately. And if they ever let one of my videos go viral, I'd be shocked. Although the video where I wore the yellow outfit and was talking about the Commonwealth and King Charles, that one got over 10,000 views, 10,300 last time I checked. And lately they've been suppressing me to under 1,000. So that's what I deal with. So the more you give a like, the more you support it, the more you care, the better off it will be. And we can keep giving these stories to you. So it's really wonderful what God can do. And I believe in miracles. And I just ask God to restore my life in these miracles because it was the highlight of my life. And with that, I'll just say, have a peaceful evening, and I'll see you in my next video. Shalom for now. Thanks for watching.